Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, I've got a great guest on to talk about a film that he's got. It is about a 9-minute short film that is very powerful. It's got a very powerful message, and he's on a mission to spread that message to as many people as he can. So we're going to talk about that film, what it was like as a veteran to make that film. So without further ado, let's just get right into it.
Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Welcome to the show, Jimmy.
Hi.
So tell us a little bit about yourself first.
All right.
A little bit of your military background and all that stuff.
Fair enough. My name is Jimmy Lucars. I am a independent filmmaker. I am also an Air Force veteran. I spent 10 years and a month in the Air Force as a security forces member. I went in 2006, did the whole Lackland basic and tech school thing. Was stationed at Columbus Air Force Base for 5.5 years, and then spent 4 years at Herbert Field, Florida. During that time, I went overseas 3 times, what I like to call vacations, and very sandy vacations. And then after I got out, I got out as a staff sergeant. I kind of plateaued because I was very happy as a staff sergeant. Looking back, I kind of wish I pushed more to get ranked, but I love being an NCO. I really did. I loved supervising troops. And then after I got out, I went to University of Hartford for film because the Air Force, though I loved it, it was a very nice career. I wanted to pursue filmmaking. I want to put my entire focus on filmmaking and telling stories. And since I spent 10 years in security forces, which I think we can all agree gives you some of the best stories in the world because you're mixing all different types of peoples from, I would say around the country, but I also met people from around the world. It gives you so many different stories. And I was like, well, if I have these stories, I should be able to tell them and tell them in a way that hopefully people can relate to and be entertained by. And like I said, I went to college, did a few short films in college for school credit, started a web series called Defending, also military history lesson, and weekend safety brief with Master Sergeant Barkley, because I figured one of my professors was like, if you're going to do a web series, do something that you consider normal, but people outside of your group would think is a new crazy thing. So security forces matches that. So I did those comedy things, and part of the goal was to draw people in. And then after I got out of college, after I graduated in 2020, right in time for COVID, I started working on my first short film post-college, Police 3, which is not a comedy. It's a drama that deals with mental health issues in the military, specifically security forces, because, well, it's an important issue. And unfortunately, we all see the numbers are way too high when it comes to suicide. And during my time in, it wasn't necessarily, it was hard to get the mental health you needed because stigma was against it, or it wasn't available, or there was a lot of reasons. And I figured that I might not have the answers. Keith, you might not have the answers, but if we get, the only way we're going to get to the answers of how to fix this problem, or at least mitigate it, is by talking. So by creating Police 3, we wanted to, myself and the filmmakers that worked on it, and there were a lot, we wanted to create a film that would generate the conversation of what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, and what can we do better in mental health, whether it is in the military, which obviously is my focus, but also the civilian world, because a lot of my civilian friends talk about how there's not enough there. In the veteran community, whatever, we obviously have a crisis. So hopefully we can talk about it. And my goal, like I said, is to get it out as far as I can, whether it's film festivals, veteran groups like the VFW, which the Waterbury VFW was a huge help in making this film, or Air Force units, security forces units, heck, Army units, if they feel like they can use it. Anybody who feels like this would start that conversation during their suicide awareness training, then I think this film can do it, because it doesn't look like your stereotypical PSA that the Air Force does or the DoD.
Yeah, I mean, it's not done from their perspective.
Keith, you saw the film, so
yeah.
what would you think?
I think it crosses lines just the way you filmed it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can tell it's Air Force because of uniforms and whatnot, but I think really any branch could watch it and look past, the fact that they're sitting in a security forces truck, on the edge of a flight line, and like look past that. I think the Army can see, a soldier could see themselves there. I think a Marine could see themselves in that situation too. So I think it transcends those branch lines pretty easily, when we all deal with the mental health. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value for any unit, At the end of the day, what really matters is, does it get people talking? At the end of your, I know it's, like 9 minutes and some change or whatever. At the end of that 9 minutes, does it cause the people who watched it to turn to one another and start a conversation? Because that's where it really starts to happen. Because like you said, like stigma in a career field, we were both security forces. I went in 06 as well. And, after my deployments, it was like, hey, there's mental health over there. But yet you had the stigma being law enforcement and security of, if you go to mental health, the commander is going to take your weapon, or mental health is going to take your weapon, whatever. That's like your whole identity. It's,
yes.
I mean, like it's not just your career. It's like your identity. It's your weapon. It's your your badge and your beret. Like you earn it. Like it's so deep. I mean, it's just like the title of an airman or a soldier, Marine. Like it is so ingrained in you. Like you can't take that away.
I actually have. I'm going to quote one of my airmen on this from long ago. We were having a mental health briefing for some captain over at Columbus, and he was talking about like how people need to ask for help and all that stuff. But one of my airmen, or I'm trying to remember if it was the airman or the flight chief, because they both talked about it. But basically, one of my airmen had an issue at home. They had to take away his weapon, which that's fair. Like there's something going on with him.
There's certainly times where that is necessary.
Exactly. And I've had my weapon taken away because my brother's fiance passed. And that is a legit reason. I wasn't going to use it on myself. But the fact is you have to take away that weapon just to be safe. And that's fine. I understand the logic behind that. The issue is, what do we do with cops that break the law? What do we do with cops that violate rules and they're under investigation? We do the same exact thing. And then with both situations, we did not talk about why those weapons were taken away. The only reason anyone in my flight knew why my weapon was taken away was because I told them. But what if I don't want to talk about my problems?
Oh yeah, if you're standing there in guard mount
without a weapon,
show up to work, you don't have a weapon. Everybody's like, okay, what's wrong? Are you in trouble? Or is there a valid reason, or is it medical? Like you have a waiver, like are you on a painkiller or something like that? You can't for a couple of days.
But it always starts with is he in trouble or is she in trouble? That's always the first thing. Is, oh, I heard so and so did this, and it destroys your self-esteem more now that everyone's talking about you behind your back. And I don't have an answer of like what you should do, because obviously if you have that breaking point, you shouldn't have a weapon. But at the same time, we should probably be talking about it as a community or as security forces. Be like, whoa, like maybe we could self-police ourselves, because like if you catch yourself starting to talk stuff about someone who's actually having mental health problems, you might be like, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. Maybe we should let them deal with whatever they're dealing with. I don't have the answer, but that's the point of the film, is to get those who are in that situation to talk. Because again, we bottled that stuff up a lot. I bottled up stuff while I was in that I didn't realize that I was bottling up. And it's only years after that I'm just like, one of my coworkers said, it's like, do you have the PTSD? I'm like, I don't think so. I don't blow up at people. And they're like, wait, I did. I literally just did. So it's like, let me reevaluate what's going on with me. But we get so used to not talking about it because we're afraid of losing our weapons. We're afraid of losing that deployment. We're afraid that we can't re-enlist. And the point of the film is, you have to take care of yourself because you can't accomplish the mission if you don't. And if you get to that breaking point where you're about to kill yourself, your career is over anyways. Your happiness, your long-term happiness is honestly more important because, again, I'm going to steal this line from the movie, but whether you stay in, if you stay in for 4 years or you stay in for 20, your career is going to end. All of our careers end eventually, whether it's in retirement or after our first enlistment. And no one's judging which way it goes, but at the end of the day, you're going to be out here in the real world like you and me are, Keith, and you're going to have to figure out how to live out here. And if you're still dealing with the trauma that happened to you before or during the military, this is not going to be a good time for you. So it's best to take care of yourself while you can, while you have those options available to you. Because out here, there's less people that can help you. It's in some places
might not be anybody to help you.
Exactly.
And it might seem like there's nobody to help you. There's always somebody to help you.
Yeah, but it's the point of I can go to the vet center over in Rocky Hill here in Connecticut, and they'll see me, and they're really good. But you could be in the middle of nowhere, I don't know, North Dakota or South Dakota, and the nearest provider might be hours away from you. Now, granted,
literally,
yeah. So
it could be 10 hours if there's snow on the ground.
But it's you need to take care of yourself when you're young, so that way you have developed those tools to take care of yourself when you're older. And again, there's a lot that the DoD and the Air Force can and should do, and some bases do it better than others. I've been talking to multiple bases, and they have their North Star program at some units, which I hope is helping a lot. I've been talking to a few North Star providers, and again, I hope that's helping. I didn't have that when I got out in 2016. Herbert Field did not have anything like that. It might have it now. I haven't talked to anyone there yet, but we didn't have that. And the more we develop, maybe the North Star program is exactly what you guys need. Great. Then that's something that works. Maybe it needs work. Maybe something's up with it that you guys think can be, do better. This, like I said, this film is just meant to get you guys talking about what we can do better. But also, if hopefully people will watch it and be like, I relate to that character. I relate to Bailey. I relate to Smith or whatever. I try to write it in a way that regardless of what your trauma is, you might be able to relate to it. And that's why it's I don't give you all the answers in the film. I don't.
You definitely don't. Yeah, you leave some things open.
But that's the point. It's a 9-minute film. The point is for you, the viewer, to put yourself in Bailey's shoes. And
it causes you to kind of ask yourself some questions like, okay, what exactly is going on here? I don't want to give too much.
Yeah.
And this is a good point to say. You do have a little trailer that
yes.
We're going to.
It's not a trailer. It's the first minute of the film.
The first minute. We're going to have the first minute. It's going to be cut into the video. So if you're listening to the podcast, this is your clue. We're going to pause here for a minute. That you need to head over to the video, and the link will be in the description in the podcast. If you're listening, if you're watching on video, you're already in luck because here it is.
BDOC, Police 3.
Go ahead, Police 3.
Initiate a flight line check.
Roger. 0133.
Bailey? What are you doing?
Can't you see I'm busy, Smith?
Well, this doesn't look like the flight line. Because if this were the flight line, I'd expect to see an airplane or maybe a runway or something. But nope, nothing. Just this building behind us, which I assume is
It's the club. The enlisted club.
So why are you telling people you are where you're not?
And there you go. So, but I do want to back up, Jimmy, and say one thing. Because you filmed this really for those that are still serving. And you hit on something earlier, and I think it's really, really important to say this to our current service members. Most people join when they're about 18 to 20, right?
Correct.
Even if you serve 20 years, that puts you at about 38 to 40-ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Life expectancy for people in this country is upper 70s, maybe around 80, give or take, or just general terms, right? So by the time you retire from the military, what that makes it with your childhood and your military service, your life is only half over. You still have the whole second half of your life yet to live.
That's a better way to say
it. So
it.
if you are 4 years into your military career and you get out, you have a mental health issue, you have to take care of stuff, and you end up getting out, it's not the end of the world. You still have your whole life ahead of you.
And it might not feel like it, but it might not. I've been in situations where I felt like everything I cared about was leaving. I really did. And the good news is, as you get older, as you get wiser, you kind of learn how to handle those situations better, more healthily. But there's a lot more adventure out there, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, if you asked me 10 years ago while I was still in the military whether or not I'd be going down this career path now, I would never have thought that. I mean,
I'll second that. I wouldn't have had a clue. I would have thought you'd been crazy if you'd have told me 10 years ago where I'm at now.
Exactly. And it changes. Divorces happen. They happen to a lot of us, unfortunately, in the military. Heartache happens, loss happens. Heck, I mean, just in the military, being in for me for 10 years, I became very close to a lot of people, and a lot of those people I don't talk to anymore, and I miss them a lot. And it is a form of heartache. But at the same time, I cherish those memories with those people. I mean, not everyone is like, it's not like they died or passed. They just went on. Like, there are people scattered throughout literally the planet that were very close friends of mine, whether it's in UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Mississippi, Columbia, Fort Walton.
But those are good times. They're simple times. They're memories. Especially when you're playing over in the sandbox and life is much simpler.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, life does go on, and there is more adventure out there. It's just about finding the tools. Like, I'm not saying that you have to be left, go down to the basement and figure things out and come back when you're healthy. No, I'm not saying do that, because that's very counterproductive. What I'm saying is, like, you still have people around you that care. You may not think they do. They may not even know there's anything going on with you. I mean, what I did with my heartache is like, okay, I need to get out and do things. I need to take control of my life. At the very least, I'm going to say plug Applebee's, because that's like the least place I want to go. But I went to Applebee's with my friends. I went to Chili's. I went wherever. It's trying to remember that there is other stuff out there. One thing I kept always trying to remind myself is today's no worse than yesterday. It's just our nostalgic brains keep on trying to tell us that yesterday was better than today. We are nostalgic creatures. Why do you think there's so many like revivals of 90s TV shows? Because, TV was so much better back then. Movies were so much better back when.
And all those remakes suck.
There's a few good ones.
Okay. I shouldn't say all of them. Okay, I'll give you that, Jimmy.
But I mean, the
majority of them do.
The new Night Court show looks like it might be good. But my point is, like, you have all these revivals because we have nostalgic brains. I think of Columbus being with those people as some of my fondest memories. There was a lot of bad that happened at Columbus. I think of Herbert as a great place. There was probably some bad stuff that happened there too, but I have to force myself to think about that and then realize, oh yeah, that thing happened, or that thing happened. And then it's like, oh yeah, okay, so today is equal to yesterday. It's not necessarily like a depressing that my entire life is the same. No, it's things change, problems change. At this point in my life, I had this person in my life, and I was very grateful for that. But these other things were happening. Now that they're gone, I miss them, but other good things are happening. Like for me right now, I'm getting interviewed by Keith here, And 2 years ago, I didn't think something like that was going to happen. I'm getting to present this film to bases, hopefully here in the future. I get to go to film festivals. 2 years ago, I was not a very happy camper, but things change as long as you put the work in to make them change. Like if you're
opportunities out there, the opportunity for growth is out there, for change. As time goes on, you grow, you adapt, you change. Like that's why we're both sitting here saying like we would not have believed ourselves 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if we would have known where we're sitting today.
Exactly. Well, what was that Rocky quote? It's not about how hard life beats you down. It's like how hard life can beat you down and you can still get back up.
Something like that. Yeah.
I know I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically
that's pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the point. It's wherever you are in your life, whether you're 19, 36, 82, you're going to have different challenges. And it's kind of the only way you become successful is fighting. Now, don't get me wrong. All of us have different levels of ability to fight. That's why we're not all Navy SEALs or all pararescue or all finance. And
not everybody can be security forces. Let's just.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. They don't just give that beret away.
The elite of the elite,
Yeah, 100 trainees went in, 99 came out with a beret.
That's right. Exactly. They don't just give berets away in the Air Force for nothing.
So, anyways, but my point is like we all have different things we're good at, different things we're strong at, and the best thing about security forces is you get introduced to so many more people. We have people in the Air Force that are paralegals. Who do they have? They have the few people that are in their office, and that's it. Security forces, how many people are on a flight? The smallest flight I was on had 12 people. The biggest flight I was on had hundreds, or like about 150. So you get introduced to a lot more people, and we have a lot more people we can reach out to. I was lucky I was at Columbus because I don't just have cops. I got cops, firefighters, whatever. But there are people out there, whether it is our friends, whether it's our family, or the vet center if we've deployed, or it's, the VA. Hopefully your local VA is good. I'm lucky. Mine is actually decent. But there are resources. So if you are in a dark place, you're not alone. There are plenty of people that want to help. The difficult thing is being a vet, not everyone thinks like us, and we don't think like them. So
absolutely. I think it's a good time to throw that up on the bottom of the screen there, just since we're talking about it. If somebody is struggling, call 988, press 1. That is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline now. So that's scrolling there. That's in the show notes as well. Seriously, if you're struggling, that's one place to call. And like Jimmy's saying, there's other people. You got battle buddies. You got wingmen. For God's sake, just call somebody at least.
Yeah, I mean, I completely second that. We actually made our. If you look closely at the uniform that Meg's wearing in the film, we actually made the Security Forces Squadron the 988th Security Forces Squadron. It was our patch designer's idea. His name. There's a company out there called Patch Phrase. He's an Air Force member, and he designs morale patches and actually creates them. So he designed the Security Forces patch, and then he came up with that number because he knew that number. Like when we were getting this film ready, he's like 988 is going to be that new National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I didn't even know. I was like, all right, let's run with that. I mean, it's a small detail, but we put a lot of work into this film to try to make it look as authentic as possible without actually calling out a single base, because you can call out whatever base, but they're not the only one that has problems. Like every base has their level of issues, some worse than others. So that's why we made up a base. We just wanted to make it look like it'd be a realistic base, but regardless of if you're at Herbert or Scott or Ellsworth, you watch the film and you're just going to hopefully fall into it and just be like, this could have happened here. Because every base has patrols. Every base has, people sometimes being posted alone. So no, that's, and we put a lot of work. I mean, our two actors put a lot of work into researching security forces, but then there is a huge security forces presence in this film. We've got 3 military advisors that are not me, that helped my old flight chief. He's a chief now, and he made sure that Meg's uniform was on spot, like it was right, as right as we could get it. Obviously, I can make Matt's uniform right because I used to wear those same ABs. And then, as far as the actors go, I had someone that got out as an airman because, or talked to Matt because he's an airman in this film. I've got, I had a tech sergeant that used to be one of the troops that I deployed with, talk to Meg at length about being a female staff or a female NCO, because I've never been a female NCO, so I can't speak to that. I can talk about being a staff sergeant in the Air Force, but I can't talk about the female side. And the people on the radio are security forces members or former security forces members. The singer at the end who wrote and performed the song, she's former security forces. Like I said, wherever we could, we try to incorporate the DNA of security forces. So when you watch it, you feel it. Meg's job was, difficult because she's never been in the military, but her job is to make you feel that she's feeling these feelings. Now, don't get me wrong. She would have jumped at the chance of being thrown into a basic training program. But she even said
she did a good job. You couldn't tell the sheet. It's good.
But she's like, if this is to be longer and you want to send me to basic training type of thing, I'll do it in a heartbeat. But that's the type of actress she is. That's why we hired her. That's why she came on board. That's
a new level of dedication right there.
Oh yeah, Matt was all for going to basic if I ever got to that point, but he was supposed to be more of the comedic figure in this thing to be the opposition to Meg's seriousness. But they have both put in a lot of work. Everyone involved did. Our cinematographer Kewan J. Harrison, does a lot of local films here, and without him, the film would not look as cinematic as it does. He gave me a lot of advice because he's got years of experience over me. And our sound guy helped us tell the story through sound. There's a scene where we end up talking about a Humvee, but if you listen closely, there's a Humvee that triggers that memory. You hear that in the background. So we try to use as much visual and audio cues to help tell this story. And I think we did a good job. I believe we did a good job. And I hope that...
I think you did an outstanding job.
I appreciate that.
I really do. I know you've been posting online about, trying to make connections at different bases. So anybody who watches or listens to this, if you are at a base and you think it's helpful, reach out to me or reach out to Jimmy so we can get it to a chaplain, base commander, whatever. But, you're mentioning all these other people who are connected with it. And I know you said you weren't an advisor, but I do want to know, how powerful was this for you as a veteran and, as a security forces veteran to have, a part in putting this together?
Well, it was a huge thing for me because I've been in that patrol car before, where life seems like it's spiraling, and you're alone in the middle of the night or even during the day, and you have your sidearm there, and it gets dark, emotionally sometimes, because it's like, I don't know where to go from here. I'm losing someone, or I'm, or I'm getting more paperwork, whatever it is, because I've had my share of paperwork too. And it's difficult. And for me, what got me through that was just go and visit the gate, go talk to the gate guards, go talk to whoever, whatever I could to just break myself out of that, because sometimes, depression hits and it hits hard. And then to be with a sidearm all night for 8 to 12 hours or whatever, it's a long time. And unfortunately, not everyone can win that battle. And that's one of the reasons why, like, if you're at that point, ask for help. Even if that means you lose your weapon, even if that means you lose your beret. But again, making this film, I wrote it originally right at the beginning of college, and then I rewrote it after college to make sure it looks better and had more emotion in it and all that. But for me, it was always important because it's like, in films, you never see it from the perspective of security forces. Like, let's say Transformers or whatever, or Eagle Eye. They're there, but you don't know what they're going through. Security forces is always in the background of any movie. And
they're ironically in the background of a lot of movies.
Yes. And that's fine. And I, just like everyone else, cheered or, swore when Jimmy died in the first Iron Man. But I'm still angry about that, given that, my name's right there. But he got out of the wrong door. I could go off on a tangent on this, but I won't. Anyways, there's a lot the security forces goes through. The one thing I loved about the mission of security forces is you're there, regardless of what happens. Medical emergencies, planes falling out of the sky, whatever. We go to it. If it happens on base, we're there. We know about it. We're part of it in one way or another. But no one talks about the real life trauma that causes to a 19-year-old. To even go to like a heart attack or a baby choking. You as a 19-year-old barely equipped for that. Now, we have films that deal with gunfire and war and all that. But what about just the daily trauma? What about losing a friend that died on a motorcycle or something that just, compared to what Hollywood puts out there, is ordinary? It's still traumatic. And or the stressors that you have, because like we were filming this right when Russia was invading Ukraine. And I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this who had to deploy to Europe at a moment's notice because of those shenanigans that Russia was pulling to bolster up the manning over there. Now, imagine if you're in the middle of a divorce when that's happening, or you're fighting for child custody. You have that stressor. And, oh, by the way, sorry, Judge, I can't make it because I have to go. Or
you're supposed to get married, or you've got your first child on the way and you've got to miss it because now you've got to go halfway around the world for God knows what the hell is going to kick off.
Exactly. And there's so many reasons. I mean, when the Benghazi attack happened, I was at Herbert Field. We were going knocking on doors to wake people up to get them ready to go out and to forward deploy. That has to be scary, to be woken up in the middle of the night and being told you got to go in 48 hours type of thing. So especially if like your kid's birthday is coming around the corner or whatever, or your parents are sick or something, there's all these stressors. And I went up to Meg during the day of filming, and I'm just like, Meg, I know I told you a lot of backstory of this character. Now let's throw in one more problem. You have all this stuff going on. You know what's going on with Russia and Ukraine? And I gave her the quick lowdown of what that meant to someone in security forces. Now you don't know if you're deploying. I mean, how is that to live? Her character in this is a parent. Now she's got to say goodbye to her kids.
That's pretty kind of clever as a filmmaker to kind of do that, like right before filming.
Oh yeah,
to throw a wrench in it in her mindset.
Yeah, just there was a lot that we put into her character's development. I actually wrote 30 pages of backstory that you guys don't see, just so she could get in that mindset, so she could deliver those emotions. And I gotta give it to Meg. She, other than froze her butt off, she put in a lot of work. Like, we're all bundled.
That never happens in security forces.
Well,
that's a lie.
Well, in the clip we showed, where she says she's not cold, oh, she's freezing. Like, she is legit freezing because all she's wearing is the what are they, OCPs, and that's it. Like, she's in the OCP level. She's not wearing her fleece. She's not wearing a beanie. That's it. And it's February here in Connecticut. It's cold. I'm bundled up. Everyone else is bundled. We have a behind the scenes photo.
And you're probably doing multiple takes, and it's like, okay, get back in the car and warm up, or the truck warm up.
Well, I mean, she was in the car, but the thing is, we can't have the car running because that's going to cause too much sound. So between takes, we turn it on, blast the heat, and then turn it off. But
but then you're like freezing and thawing. You're like, yeah.
But she doesn't even show that she's cold. She's freezing. Matt, who's playing Smith, he's got the beanie on, he's got the fleece on, he's good to go. But Meg's not, and yet she pushed through, and everyone put in a lot of work, and yeah, I would love to go further into Bailey's backstory, but we have 9 minutes. That's the point of the film. It's not my job to tell you how she gets to this breaking point. It's your job. I tell you enough so you understand that she's there. Our goal is to make you, the viewer, relate. Because if I do what, let's say, other filmmakers do who have a whole 90 minutes or 2 hours, oh, yeah, this happened in Afghanistan or this happened in Iraq. Okay, well, I never went to Afghanistan. I never went to Iraq. How do I relate to that? I know nothing about those places. I don't even know if the chow hall was any good. I can tell you what the chow hall was like in, certain Gulf states and which ones were better than which. But I can't go into detail about those deployments, so I'm going to kind of zone out a little bit. But if I leave that blank and you were at a missile field base, then you might be able to relate. So that's kind of the point of this film, is to get it to the point where you relate enough as the viewer, so that way, when it's time to talk about this film, you can relate, you can project yourself into it. Whether you see it as a group, in a small, like a large training session, a small training session, or if the VFW locally shows it, or once in the future, unless, we get very lucky, we might be posting this on YouTube in a year or two after it's done with this film festival. But we want people to talk about it. We want civilians to talk about it. Because again, these civilians who will see it at film festivals, they're used to seeing films from the perspective of what Hollywood wants, which is like Zero Dark 30 or whatever, which, again, not bad movies, but that's talking about Navy SEALs. The majority of us aren't Navy SEALs or Special Forces or, don't get me wrong, I respect those guys, but the majority of us are your average infantryman or your average security forces or your average paralegal or your average whatever. And to create a movie that relates to them, maybe that can help people in those situations talk more. Because the trauma in our military does not come necessarily from deploying. It can come from being at home stationed. I've been to
toxic leadership, military sexual trauma,
plane crashes,
assault, plane crashes. Yeah, anything that you respond to. I mean, it could. I mean, what you're dealing with could come from something that's not even military related. It could come from your personal life, domestic disturbance, or anything, loss of a loved one, whatever. Like, there's a lot of different things.
And that's why I wanted to make this film, is so that way those stories could be projected into this. But at the same time, again, I'm not to discount anyone that went to war, because that's traumatic. That can be very traumatic. But if you're a combat vet, you could watch this and see yourself in Bailey's character, or you could have never deployed or never left the missile fields, or, and you still see yourself. And that's kind of the point.
You said something about civilians a minute ago that I think is interesting. In the way they typically, like or review, military style films, but leaving this open-ended or vague enough would also get them talking and asking questions, which I think is also unique. because that could get them saying, as a civilian, this is interesting. What is happening here? Like, I know enough to know that this lady's obviously struggling, but I don't understand why. So what's going on in our military to make this lady struggle?
Exactly. And the hope is that, like, we all know there's a problem in the military when it comes to mental health. We all know that there's
And I think most civilians have a pretty good idea
Yeah.
if they're paying attention that there's a fucking problem here.
But the thing is, it's not the way Hollywood projects it of like, oh God, you know, in Iraq, I killed someone. Now I'm dealing with it here, or I saw someone get killed. There's so many different ways, like we've covered, but the only way things are going to change for the better in the military is if those in the military try to change it, but also those outside of the military try to change it. Like, if there's enough people outside the military saying there's a problem in the military, we need to fix it, then Congress gets involved. Then, you know, the government actually says, because the thing is, at the end of the day, our politicians, or let's say congressmen, are only there for 2 years. If we are not happy with what they're doing, we're not going to vote for them again. And their goal is to make us happy, which, I mean, that's the whole point of Congress, right? So some do it, some don't, whatever. But my point is, if you have enough people talking about, hey, this is an issue, we need to fix it, that will motivate those in power to fix the problem. And that's kind of why I want to show it at film festivals and at military establishments. I mean, the other reason I want to show it at film festivals is because I'm a filmmaker. At the end of the day, I am now a filmmaker. My job is to try to tell stories. And I have so many stories, thanks to my military career and college and whatever, that I want to tell these stories. And I'm just going to use Hollywood as the term, but the filmmaking community, that make movies, they want people that have different stories. Because if you can tell a very simple, but like a very relatively inexpensive story that touches a lot of people, they want that. They want that in a heartbeat.
Profit margins, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing
Easy to
is,
tell story that gets emotions up and all that stuff.
Exactly. And
sells tickets. Yeah.
My goal as a filmmaker is to get the stories out that tell the stories of you guys. Like we have stories about military people that are good stories that we should be telling on the screen. Not the version that, you know, Michael Bay wants to tell. Like, you know, there are some good entertaining Michael Bay films, but at the end of the day, the best military films or police films are made by those who kind of can relate to it. So, like,
that's because they're real and authentic.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you look at Band of Brothers, for instance, you know, I love that movie. That TV show, that feels authentic as crap because, well, you know, Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg put as much effort as they could to making it as authentic as possible. And that's because they cared about the thing. You watch something like, let's say, though I did enjoy watching The Flash a few years ago, those people that are playing military people don't care. The army's there because the army's there, and that's it. But more filmmakers that come from our generation of military people can make better stuff. Like, you had military former Vietnam vets that came home from Vietnam and they started making movies. And you have classic movies that tell the story of the Vietnam War experience. So that is kind of my goal, is to take our generation. Sure, I didn't see combat, but I understand the military mindset. And I want to tell military movies. I also want to tell other types of movies, comedies, you know, dramas, whatever. But at the end of the day, I want to take what I have experienced in the military for 10 years and bring it to the world that doesn't understand it. And do it like if I was to make a TV show about life in the Air Force. I want to take it with so much care that you, Keith, or anyone else watching would be like, he put as much effort into this simple TV show that, you know, Steven Spielberg put into Band of Brothers. Because yeah, it might be fiction, granted, probably stealing some stuff from the real world, but it's taken with so much care that you'd be like, wow, those uniforms are dead on. Like, I'm no longer distracted by the mistakes. I'm focused on the story. Because there's a lot of filmmakers that, make amazing films, but they're like, what the uniform looks like doesn't matter. The story is more important. The story is important. I agree with that. But if no one's paying attention to that story, then they're not going to listen.
But the uniform and the way that the actors carry themselves and interact is arguably just as important.
That is the fault
of the story.
Well, and that is the fault of the director and the writer. They're not writer, but the director and the producer. Because the producer has, if financially they have the ability to, can hire the right people to make sure everything looks right. The director's job is all the actor does is just portrays whatever they're told to portray. And that is it. If the direction given is act like you're in the military, great. So they're going to salute like this. But if that director and producer has hired someone like R. Lee Ermey to make sure that the salute's right, then you're good. Like you make sure the beret is formed. You make sure,
the small details are taken care of.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to put that extra effort in. And in my opinion, which I will continue arguing even against my professors, is if you're trying to make a police show or a firefighting show and the small things are off, they're not going to pay attention to that story. Even if your story is 100% accurate, even if it's like, wow, they really made sure this is like, it's a dramatization, but it's still very authentic. Well, why would they pay attention if things are off? Like I know it's silly, but to our community, to the veteran community, the military community, it kind of adds up. And it's like, we have ADD. We're all weaponized ADD. So the last thing we're focused on is the thing we're supposed to be.
Yeah, we spot those mistakes a mile away.
Yeah, and then we focus on it's like, wait, I can't take this actor seriously. The actor didn't make the uniform.
It could be like the greatest movie in the world, but if their salute is like this, just done for.
Exactly.
Like, it's just over.
But that's the thing. Is like that's why for me, I believe like in our short film, I tried to put as much effort as I could financially afford. There are mistakes. I will be the first to admit it because like we're using an M9 in this thing. Yeah, I get it. We switched over to the SIG 2 years ago or whatever it was. I get that. However, the SIG prop was $300 and so was the holster. So that's, $600 for a prop that you're only going to see for like, 5 seconds max. And we did not have that in our budget. Or the fact that we actually want to put real plates in her vest. But those things were like $300 each. And yeah, out of our budget. So we bought foam plates that fill it out. So it looks like it, but she's not actually weighed down. The vest we bought had to be the cheaper knockoff version of the vest that's actually used because again, we had to make budget cuts where we could. But
it's not much different than the actual quality, right?
Exactly. But yeah. But we bought the OCPs and the beret and the t-shirt and her socks, like everything from Kellac. We went as far as we could because we were like, well, what if we decide to shoot from her boots? It's an option. Her boots are legit, Air Force issued boots. I think they're Bellevue's. But we went to the point where she's wearing the right t-shirt. Like you barely see the t-shirts like that.
Yeah, you did a great job on that stuff because I didn't even notice the M9 or any of that other stuff. So
you did
a great job on that stuff.
Trying to get an F-150 in Connecticut was difficult because, I'm like, I know security forces still use the F-150. I work at a car dealership. We had none. We had none that they're like, we have brand new ones, but we're not going to let you touch it. Thanks. So I had to rent one from Enterprise and they're like, we have one. Sweet. It's in black. Okay. That's close enough. And the people that are trying to help me, they're like, well, we can give you a Lexus. Yeah, we don't drive Lexuses at security forces. So it was a constant battle to try to make it as authentic as possible. We went with the VFW in Waterbury, Connecticut, because they let us use it for free. So very thankful to them. But that's the closest thing to a military establishment that we have in Connecticut. Like that VFW is a steel building. It's close enough to a steel building that you'd find, somewhere on Herbert Field or something. But like I would have loved to have those like brick buildings with the metal tops that we have on almost all of our Air Force bases, but we don't have those in Connecticut. And trying to find something that's not surrounded by houses that are like 100-year-old houses from Connecticut, those don't match military buildings. So we did our best with what we have here. You may also notice that the magazines are wrong. Well, I live in Connecticut. 30-round magazines are very much illegal here. So, we had to do what we could. But
I don't
again,
think most people notice most of that stuff.
But,
yeah.
But me as a vet, I noticed it.
Yeah.
And I'm directing it. But it's at the end of the day, we tried to do what we could. We put the patches in the right spots to make sure, and, made sure they got inspected by the person that used to critique my uniform. So that way we're good. Our goal is to try to take care of and honor the security forces members that are serving and did serve and will serve. Because at the end of the day, everyone in the service, but let's talk about security forces because they're usually ignored. What they do is important. Like whether it's deploying, doing convoys, or just sitting around a nuke, like it's all important. Like you may like I found myself sitting around in the desert feeling like I'm not doing anything on a hot Humvee. But at the end of the day, what we do matter. Because if we weren't there, then someone else would mess with that stuff. And
it definitely matters, man. And I just want to say I appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us and doing this film because it matters. And it's going to, I have no doubt, it's going to impact some people's lives. And it's going to send some people to mental health. It's going to put some people on the right path. And you know what? At the end of the day, that's what really matters.
I certainly hope so. And everyone, on behalf of everyone that worked on this project, whether it's our actors, voice actors, singer-songwriter, our sound guys, editors, like everybody, even our production assistants, everyone. The one thing we all agree on is this film is important because we all, whether they're vets, active duty, or civilians, we all care about you guys. All of us care about both those who are currently serving and those who are, vets. Like you guys truly matter. And at the end of the day, we want to create something that will hopefully give you guys the tools to continue a happy life. Get a happy life. Have that life that you deserve because you guys deserve it. I mean, you guys have said, seriously, like from the perspective of someone who did serve for 10 years, whether you serve for 4 or 20 or whatever, that's a sacrifice. You have really cut out a chunk of your life. I am starting this career now in my 30s that most people start in when they're in their early 20s. I gave 10 years to our country, just like you guys are giving time to your country. So all we want to see is you guys find that life that you want to have, that you have earned, and to enjoy it for the rest of your days. And yeah, there's plenty of resources out there, some better than others. And we have that never-ending goal to make it better. So please, if you need help, ask for it.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on, Jimmy.
Happy to do so.
All right, there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. You definitely need to check out that video. Remember, check out my website for all kinds of information and resources. And like I always say, if there's something that's not on there and you think it should be, make sure you reach out and let me know. And as we talked about earlier, if you are struggling, make sure you call 988-PRESS-1.